name is Debbie and I'm the shrink on your couch. I'm also the owner of Bariatric Mind Masters, the Facebook group, and create various online transformational programs to assist people through various life challenges. And certainly bariatric surgery is one of those challenges that I focus on, being a sleeve gastrectomy patient myself. I spent some time last weekend reading a really profound book written by James Clear called Atomic Habits. And I was really surprised by, well, actually he blew my mind with various things that he said, and I found it very inspiring, and it helped me to focus on my bariatric journey a little bit more stringently and more methodically this past week. But I have always been of the view that dopamine is a neurotransmitter which plays a huge role in compulsive behavior and in addiction. We know, psychologists, psychiatrists, medical people, we're aware that dopamine plays a role in craving. We know that when a compulsive or addictive behavior is executed, that there's this hit of dopamine, which is like a rush of good feeling to the brain, and it entrenches the habit. And so we're aware that when we're dealing with addictions and compulsions, that we're dealing with physiology as well as psychology, and that one of the reasons why it's so hard to overcome a craving or an addiction or a compulsion is because there's chemistry involved, and so you're actually going against the grain of our anatomy and physiology. But James Clear blew this whole thing out the water and made me understand why it's even more difficult than is sometimes implied in the logic of what I've just explained. He says that modern studies show that the dopamine is not released when we use the drug of choice. So it's not when we do the line of Coke, or when we eat the 3 donuts, or when we win the jackpot at the casino, if gambling is an issue. That in fact, we're so betrayed by our physiology that dopamine is released at the point of craving. So there's a conscious or unconscious trigger in our environment. Something makes us want to act out. In our case, usually something makes us want to eat. So whether it's just the presence of an addictive food, or whether we're upset, whether we're anxious, whether there's something that we in our world associate with a binge, it's at that point that we get the hit of dopamine, and that floods our bodies with the pursuit of the object of our affection, as it were. And this actually makes sense to me, because if I think about my worst days, my most bingy, cravey, compulsive days, it almost feels like a foregone conclusion that I'm going to eat badly from the point at which I really want to. And so that rush of dopamine that James Clear says is affected on craving makes a lot of sense to me, because then I've got to fight really hard to withstand. The point at which I'm consumed with a craving really does feel almost physiologically powerful. And so I found that really interesting, but also a little bit sobering. But I must also be honest that awareness in my mind is always 90% of the battle won. I truly believe, and I even teach it in my Bariatric Mind Masters program, that what we are aware of, we can overcome. What is just playing out mindlessly, unconsciously in the background, we're a slave to. But once we know something, we can almost upskill and arm ourselves against. So I know now that if a huge craving hits, that I must be aware that it's not just in my mind, it's not just a desire or a longing, that there has been a chemical infusion into my being, and that I need to withstand that. And I'll do that through awareness of it, through distraction, through taking myself in hand and forcing myself to go and do something else, through what I call SOS, which is stop immediately. As you're reaching for the thing you don't want to do, stop, observe yourself doing it, and steer. Get the hell out of there as quickly as you can. and also through what we call urge surfing. It's a CBT, DBT principle, but the idea that we're often misled to believe that a craving or an urge will build and build and build until we eventually give into it. But this has found not to be the case. The case is often that if we just withstand and tolerate and resist, that eventually the urge will break, much like a wave on the beach, and will no longer be an issue, and we won't have acted out, and we'll also have mastered that moment and feel edified and encouraged by our own resolve. So just a quick chat about the role of dopamine in our cravings and how awareness of what's happening as it's happening can be really useful to withstand and overcome. If this speaks your language, if I speak your language, if what I'm speaking about resonates with you, I really urge you to look at my Bariatric Mind Masters formal program, because it contains enormous amounts of value along these kind of lines, but in a really systematic, strategic, structured way that gives you the work to do on your own bariatric journey, from a point of compulsivity and craving to freedom around food, weight loss, and maintenance of that loss without regain well into the future. Thank you for listening.